All right, Shabbos, good evening, good evening. First of all, Mazel Tov to Adam David Edelman on the engagement of his daughter Ella. Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov. Simchas, brachas to Yehuda Deutsch. Maishi. Not Moshe, Maishi.
Moshe is tomorrow's husband, so we got to separate the name.
Got it.
Say Moshe.
Yeah, listen, this is not like a therapy session. It's just the Mazel Tov. That was it. You already got to get to too much. Like I said, Mazel Tov to the Edelman Mishpacha on Ella's engagement in Meretz Hashem. The Edelman Mishpacha should keep running from Simcha to Simcha, from Mazel to Mazel, and the Esrim Shanim Tavos. So with that, let us begin. So we are beginning tonight in Meretz Hashem, continuing in Hilchos Zoreya. So in Meretz Hashem, I thought we originally were going to finish up Zoreya tonight. Turns out they're probably going to go into a little bit of next week as well, because we're going to see actually there's a fascinating subtopic that I want to spend a little bit of time on. So let's continue. So let's just remember again, we actually finished last week's Ma'ar Makomos, right? Yeah, we finished last week's Ma'ar Makomos, good. So remember again, just to redefine our Malacha of Zoreya. So Zoreya is any act which causes, facilitates, or improves the growth of a plant. So now again, so take a look at number one. I actually mentioned this last week outside, but now let's see it inside. The Shulchan Aruch writes, Yesh le'izar milahashlich zira'im b'mokom yiridas gesham sofan lahatzmiach. Person has to be careful about throwing seeds in any area where there's rainfall, out of the possibility, ultimately, again, that the seeds could germinate and grow. So if you remember, again, I said last week, this is the same Shulchan Aruch, this is the same sif that talks about the chicken feed, right? How you have to be careful when throwing out feed for your chickens, that you throw out enough for a day or for two, but not for more than that. So again, along these same lines, halacha l'maisa, so you're sitting outside on a nice summer day, a little bit of a contrast, right? So sitting outside on a nice summer day, you're eating a peach, and again, you just want to throw the pit on the ground. You're not allowed to do that. An apple core can't do that. Even grape seeds, right? Grape seeds, watermelon seeds, right? You just want to spit out, then spit onto the ground. Halacha l'maisa, Shulchan Aruch says you can't spit seeds onto soil, ultimately, again, where it has the ability to grow and to germinate. Now, obviously, again, this is only assuming we're talking about soil where there's a possibility for growth. So, for example, on sand or things like that where there's no possibility for growth, this issue does not come up. Number two, Shulchan Aruch writes as follows. Another interesting halacha here. Aval ha'ochlim beganos asurim litol yedeim al ha'asabim shemashkimosam. So here's an interesting case. The Shulchan Aruch writes that if somebody's eating outdoors, literally eating in the garden, so of course you can't wash your hands over the grass. Right? So again, let's say it's a beautiful summer day. I want to have my Shabbos Su'uda outside. Right? I mean, lunch, eating Shalosh Udis, so I have to do Netilas Adayim. So I want to wash my hands over the ground. You're not allowed to do that. He says, Afapi she'ena mechavnin. Even though, again, it's not my kavanah to water the grass or to water the vegetation, nevertheless, psik reishu. It's a psikation. So we'll say this halacha is pretty intuitive, right? It makes a lot of sense that halacha l'maisa, obviously you can't pour water onto the ground, onto plants, onto grass. Now here's what's interesting. Aval mutar lahatil bahem meiraglayim oshar mashkin she'ena matzmichim. So apparently, what you can do is you could urinate. Again, not at the Shabbos Suda. I want to divide the cases a little bit over here, right? But this is what's interesting. What's interesting is, even though, again, I don't know, I didn't get a chance to Google this. I'm always nervous to Google stuff like this because you never know exactly what comes up. But it was interesting because given the fact that urine, I don't know what the percentage is about urine, how much, Dr. Weinberg, how much of urine is water? A lot. Is that the technical medical answer? Not good. So it's interesting. So the Shulchan Aruch says, even though, again, some amount of it is water, the Shulchan Aruch understands that urine is not beneficial for plant growth. So interestingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch paskins that one is permitted to urinate on plants or on grass, or for that matter, it's not just urine, but it's any liquid which would not facilitate growth. So just to give an extreme example, if one were to pour bleach on grass, so ultimately, again, there's no issue of Zoreya over there, which of course makes sense. Haga. So we'll say, so two contrasting cases. Case number one, where the Shulchan Aruch talks about that you can't go ahead and wash your hands over the grass. And case number two, where you can urinate on the grass, or for that matter, pour any liquid which would not facilitate growth. Haga. So the Ramah says, V'lachein tov lahachmir shelo le'echol baganos. This is interesting. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch says, therefore, it is better to avoid eating in the grassy areas, right? Or areas on Shabbos. Better. Also because think about it again, even any kind of spillage that may occur, you may also run into a problem. So therefore the Shulchan Aruch says, better not to eat your meals on ganos im yishtamish sham im mayim. If you have any liquids there, water, any other liquid that can facilitate growth, better not to. Tibikoshi yesh lizar shelo yiplu shamayim. Now just to be clear, the Ramah is not saying that it's usher. It's a nice Shabbos and I want to eat my food outdoors. The Ramah is not saying it's asar. He's just saying you have to be careful, right? Because even inadvertently, one could come to go ahead and be over on the malacha of Zoreya. Okay. I'm sorry? 100%. So sure, people were starting to get together and they were eating outdoors, 100%. And again, what the Ramah is just adding in over here is we'll say, obviously, there's two cases. Obviously, actively washing your hands over the grass, okay, but even just inadvertent spillage, which is part and parcel of almost every single meal, one runs into a potential issue of Zoreya as well. I'm sorry. Take a look at number 3. So in the Sefer Chot HaShani, look what he writes over. He says, Ein Isser Lirok ktsas b'Shabbos al gabi karka al gabi zoran. Says there is no problem spitting. Baruch shekivanta. No problem. Now he says lirok ktsas, spitting a little bit on ground or even on seeds. He says kevan she'ein derech lahashkos zra'im al yedei rok. Since again, that's not the normal way. In other words, no one goes ahead and waters seeds like that with saliva. Ve'in lachshosh biktsas rok mishum hatzmechei azraim. And a little bit of saliva is not going to do anything ultimately, again, for the growth of the seeds. Now, I will say, that is the Chot HaShani. Now, conventional wisdom is, we still avoid it. But where did this come up? I don't know. Let's say a person is not feeling well and they have phlegm that they want to expel. So a person doesn't have to walk around with it in their mouth until they get home. Again, one would be permitted to go ahead and expel that on the ground. Now, ideally, it would be better to do it on concrete than it is to do it on grass or on plant life. But again, Me'ikar Adin, the Chot HaShani says it's not a problem. Okay?
Is there a grammar concept? Or you wash your hands out in the driveway?
So the answer here's the problem. The problem is you're going to get into still a psik situation, right? Because now, if you go wash your hands on the driveway and it's very possible for the water to remain contained on the driveway and not spill off, then einachinami, you probably could do that. But chances are, on a driveway, it's going to run into grass. So you're really going to run into a psik situation. Take a look at number 4. So we'll say, so now we come to a very interesting sugya about flowers on Shabbos, flowers and water. Now, remember, there's 2 issues when it comes to flowers. One is a potential muktzah issue, which we're not going to deal with over here. Here we get something very interesting. Look at number 4. It's actually the Ramah. So the Ramah in Shin Lamed Vav Sif Yirav. We'll say all of this is Siman Shin Lamed Vav. He writes over as follows. Hagav. Umutra lahamid anfe ilanos b'mayim b'Shabbos. Now, we'll say, literally translated, anfe ilanos means branches. But again, for our purposes, we could just as easily substitute branches with flowers. I think it's just an easier way to read the Shulchan Aruch. So you are permitted to go ahead and put flowers into water on Shabbos. Fascinating. Put flowers, waters into Shabbos, but there are a couple of caveats. Ubilvad shelo yuhu bahem prachim v'shoshanim shem niftachim melachluches hamayim. Now, we'll say the caveat is they can't be the type of flowers, or branches for that matter, that will open up as a result of the water, right? Again, we've spoken about this many times, about the obligation that a person has to buy his wife flowers on Erev Shabbos. It's not a nice thing, it's not a romantic thing, it's just stam adin in hakaras hatov. A wife does everything, and again, a husband, the least hakaras hatov is Shabbos, to come home with flowers, not Trader Joe's flowers, not Trader Joe's flowers, right? Real flowers, like from a florist. Right? So I'll say, so again, that's the, or at least if it's Trader Joe's. You have a question on that?
I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
So what if the flowers of the branch are not going to open up on Shabbos while you put it?
Oh, wait. Hold up. So let me give the background to this. So we'll say, so now remember again, you could buy flowers that are closed, right? And then ultimately, again, when you put them in water, they'll open up. So the Shulchan Aruch says something very interesting. You could put flowers in water on Shabbos as long as whatever's open, it already opened. But if you're going to put in flower, look, we see this all the time, like with roses or with tulips, where often you'll purchase a flower that's closed, right? And then again, over time, the bulb opens up. So again, the Shulchan Aruch says that you can't put into water. So let's take a step back over this. So
it's eventual. So
Correct. Give me one second. Let me paint the picture over here. So we'll say. So remember again. Technically speaking, when something is detached from the ground, it's no longer growing, right? So therefore, again, the act of putting cut flowers into water is not Zoreya. Why is it not Zoreya? Because there's no further growth. The flower is not growing. The flower is not growing. It's done. It's done. It doesn't matter if you put it in forward or don't put plant nutrients in there. It's once it's detached from the ground, it is no longer going to grow. Now, therefore, again, technically speaking, mid'oraisa, putting flowers into water is not a problem. What the Shulchan Aruch is highlighting over here is that there are certain times or certain circumstances where there will still be an Isser D'Rabbanan. So now the Shulchan Aruch says, for example, what's a case where there'd be an Isser D'Rabbanan? Where the bulbs are going to open up. Why? Why is there an Isser D'Rabbanan there? What do you think? Why is there an Isser D'Rabbanan? It looks like Zoreya. Again, remember, I want to be clear, it's not Zoreya. Once something is detached from the ground, it is no longer subject to the din of Zoreya. So there is no D'Oraisa issue over here. But again, you could see this intuitively. Putting flowers into water and then the bulbs opening up, an hour later, 2 hours later, 2 days later, at the end of the day, Lemaisa, it has the appearance of Zoreya. So it'll be an Isser D'Rabbanan. That's the Shulchan Aruch is saying over here. He says again, good. So let's analyze this a bit more. So now, okay, so take a look at Mishnah Berurah number 5. So he says, Lahamid anfei lanos, shekotetzin bimos achama, I'm sorry, number 5, the Mishnah Berurah, Sifka and Nun Gimel. Shekotetzin bimos achama, lismoach bahen babayis, b'ratzalam shehochnu me'esma lakach, aval stan anfei ilan having muktzah. Okay, so obviously, we're not going to get into this right now. This is the muktzah piece that I was talking about. We're just going to sidestep that for a little bit. Take a look at, still in source number 5, Mishnah Berurah Sifkat Nun Daled. This is incredibly important. Look what he writes over here. So I will say, if you notice, the Shulchan Aruch number 4 referenced us to Siman Taf Reish Nun Daled. Siman Taf Reish Nun Daled is the halachas of lulav and esrog, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. So look at Mishnah Berurah, source number 5, Sifkat Nun Daled. Ratzal Omar, the Sham Mevuar, the Eino Mutter b'Shabbos Kim lahachzir b'mayim sha'amdu bo mikvar be'erev Shabbos. So I both say, so now Mishnah Berurah does something very interesting. When you look at number 4, and the Ramah said, Mutter lahamid anfe ilanos b'mayim b'Shabbos, you could put flowers into water on Shabbos. It sounds like what? Even l'chatchila. Right? I brought my wife home flowers on Erev Shabbos. It was a busy Erev Shabbos. She only realizes after Shabbos started, she didn't put the flowers in water. Sounds like from the Shulchan Aruch that you could put the flowers into water on Shabbos. As long as the bulbs won't open up. The Mishnah Berurah quotes the first opinion and says, no. That's not the halacha. The halacha is, if the flowers were already in water on Shabbos, and then ultimately, again, they were removed, they could be put back into water on Shabbos. I don't know, whatever. You were moving the vase. You didn't want to move everything together, so you took the flowers out and moved the vase. You could put the flowers back into the water like that. Go back to Mishnah Berurah. He says, "Lahachzir b'mayim she'amdu bo mikvar yom, v'lo lahosif od mayim tzoninim." You can't add any more water. V'chosh k'shol lahachlif hamayim legamri. You can't change the water. He says, "V'lefiza had the kasav mikodem demutar lahamidan hanu lahachziran b'Shabbos lisochan." So we'll say, according to the first opinion in the Mishnah Berurah, what the Shulchan Aruch is saying is, if flowers were in water, Erev Shabbos going into Shabbos, and for some reason you took them out on Shabbos, you could put them back in on Shabbos. Put them back in.
It's like keep holding on to the vase the whole time?
No, it's not like Bishul. Not like, no. In other words, you'd be able to go ahead and put it back in. It's very important. Sugar?
Yeah, makes them stay better longer. Like you add things.
Look at you. No, because the truth is, putting sugar, you can't, the same way you can't change the water, or you can't add water, you can't add anything to the mixture over here. The idea that the first opinion is saying is, if you took them out, you can put that back in. He says, Afilu in kvar nitlu mehen, avalo lahamidan lechatchila. So we'll say, this is incredibly important. So now he's quoting over here, the Chachmas Adam, this being the Chachmas Adam, that the halacha is that what the Shulchan Aruch, what the Ramah is saying is, if flowers were in water at the start of Shabbos, and for some reason you took them out, whatever the reason is, ultimately you could put them back in. But what can't you do? You can't put flowers into water l'chatchila for the first time on Shabbos, nor can you add water, nor can you exchange water. Now watch this. V'yesh achronim, so we'll say the second opinion of Mishnah Berurah, V'yesh achronim shesobrim, B'midistam hamechaber mashma da'afil lechatchila mutar la'amidam bekad sheyesh bo mayim mizumanim me'erev Shabbos v'lo amru ela lahosif atam mayim mishum tircha yisera. Second opinion says Rabbi say that no, even lechatchila you could put flowers into water on Shabbos. Incredible, right?
Even if it's going to, the flowers will...
No. If it's going to open, everyone agrees you can't do it, right? That's every.
But on Erev Shabbos, you put it in, it's going to open on Shabbos also.
No, that's Erev Shabbos.
Put it in Erev Shabbos, but it's a possibility that it will bother on Shabbos.
Yeah, that's fine. In other words, remember, Malacha always happens in our homes on Shabbos, right? You put food in your crock pot. It's cooking on Shabbos. Yeah, no. This is a din ultimately. When he talks about blossoming, it's a din on Shabbos itself. Shabbos says, so now the second opinion says something very interesting. So the second opinion says, no, you're even lechatchila allowed to put flowers into water on Shabbos. So now watch this. So in other words, Shabbos says, just place according to the second opinion, I bring my iPhone flowers on Shabbos. She forgot to put it in the vase before Shabbos. Now I come up from shul, I see the flowers are on the counter. I say, no, I'm going to put them. According to the second opinion, you could put the flowers into the vase on Shabbos itself. What can't you do? What can't you do? You can't go ahead and add more water or exchange the water. Why? Tircha yisera. We have this concept by Hilchos Shabbos, Tircha Yisera, of ultimately, again, unnecessary or excessive expenditure of effort. So Rabbi says, so a fundamental machlokes over here between what the Shulchan Aruch, what the Ramah is saying. Opinion number one, that the Ramah is saying that you can never put flowers lechatchila into water on Shabbos, just if they were there already on Shabbos and you took them out, you could return them, right? But according to that opinion, even though you could return it, you can't add water, you can't exchange water. Second opinion, you could even lechatchila put flowers into water. Now, I'll say it's interesting, by the way, the way he phrases it over here is you could put flowers into water into a vase that was prepared already on Erev Shabbos. So in other words, because Rabbi say, if you start filling up the vase, right, then the problem just is that what? That there's tircha yisera involved. So second opinion would say, if everything was ready, just you didn't put the flowers in, you could even lechatchila put the flowers in on Shabbos. Now, look at the last line of the Mishnah. B'Ravida, to be yesh b'hem prachim, and Chaim, this is your point, to be yesh b'hem prachim, sheneftochim, machmos hamayim, asu l'kuli ama afla hachzir mayim, shandu and ekvar. Rabbi say, everyone agrees that what? That if these flowers have the type of bulb that's going to open up once it comes into water, everyone agrees that you can't put it back into water on Shabbos, whether it was already there or whether ultimately, again, that you're putting in lechatchila. So I will say a really interesting halacha. So therefore I will say what essentially comes out is as follows over here. So let's kind of put this halacha together. So what we have over here is once flowers are cut, I'm just going to use flowers, but really you could apply it to any plant you want, right? Once flowers are cut, they're no longer subject to the melacha d'oraisa of Zoreya. There's no longer any Zoreya. Okay, so now the most we have is a potential d'Rabbanan. And therefore, again, when does the Rabbanan apply? So again, everyone agrees the Isser d'Rabbanan will apply if the flowers will blossom. I don't know if blossom is the right term, but you understand, like the bulbs will open up as a result of being put in water. Then I will say, so then the other machlokes, or everyone also agrees that filling the vase with water, right, or exchanging the water, or putting in more water, ultimately, again, is going to be tircha yisera. What's the machlokes? The machlokes is, can you put the flowers in lechatchila for the first time in a prepared vase on Shabbos? Second opinion says yes. First opinion says no. That's our machlokes. Good. So I'll say, so take a look at number 6. The Shar Tzion comments on this and he says, he quotes over here this second opinion, quoted in Mishnah Berurah, who allows you to put flowers into water even lechatchila on Shabbos, says, so he's quoting, it's the Pri Megadim and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, he says, ve'efshar diyesh lismoch al zeh im shachach lamin dami ba'od yom kevan she'ein bahem prachim v'les bazeh chashash da'oraisa. Shabbos, this is very interesting. So let's use our exact case. I brought my wife home flowers for Shabbos, right? I forgot to put them in the vase before Shabbos, but the vase was set up. So the Shar Tzion himself says, I come home from shul, and realize, I forgot to put them in water. So what am I allowed to do? So again, it's a machlokes. So generally with a machlokes like this, you'd say, you know what? Better not to put it in water. The Shar Tzion says, yeah, you can put it in water. You could put it in water. You could rely on the second opinion that allows even lechatchila placement of flowers into water on Shabbos. But again, with the caveat that what? With the caveat that the flowers are not going to bloom or blossom once put in the water. Incredible. Now, I'll show you something interesting here. Which is we're going to see an interesting contrast here between Shabbos and Yontiv. So take a look at number 7. Shabbos. So this, remember again, the Shulchan Aruch made reference to Siman Taf Reish Nun Dalet. In source number 4, the Shulchan Aruch says, see Siman Taf Reish Nun Dalet. So here it is in number 7. Mekabelas Isha Halulav Miyad Bina Umiyad Baila Umachziraso L'Mayim V'tosif Alav Mayim Im Tzarech Avalo Tachlif HaMayim. So listen to this. So the Shulchan Aruch says, a woman could go ahead and receive the lulav. Now, why the Shulchan Aruch, phrase it as a woman could do it, and anyone could do it. In other words, you could take your lulav on Yom Tiv after you came home from shul, and what can you do? You could put it into water. Apparently, it keeps the lulav fresh. Right? You could put it. Not only that, you could even add in water into the lulav vase if you need to. However, you can't exchange the water. You can't change the water on Yom Tiv. Mitzvah lahachlifam kadesh yashir lach v'hadar or v'hidar, right? But on Chalamayid, it's good to change the water so that the lulav remains moist. Now, what's interesting about this? Here, what do you see on Yantiv? L'chatchila, everyone's agreeing that's what? That you could put the lulav into water, and not only that, but you could what? Add water. Mishnah Berurah number 8 says, V'lo gazvinon mishum hashakas zroim. So I'll say, just interesting to see that halacha l'maisa, this din d'Rabbanan of Zoreya only applies on Shabbos, does not apply on Yom Tiv. Not apply on Yom Tiv. So just an interesting distinction. Take a look at number 9. About that is an interesting discussion. So some posts can bring down that this is dafka din and lulav because it's a chavtzav mitzvah of the day, and that's why the din d'Rabbanan is suspended. Others say what it's just saying is that on Yom Tiv, the din d'Rabbanan of Zoreya doesn't apply. So, Barshak Yivanta, it's a bigger machlokes. I didn't really want to get into that right now because whatever, it's Hilchos Yom Tiv. But just for illustration purposes, take a look at number 9. Avalo Tachlif. But even on Yom Tiv, you can't exchange the water. He says, the Tarachu l'takune mana. Ultimately, because I will say once again, that's a lot of effort. A lot of effort. He says, "V'immutar la'amidan lechatchila b'mayim ayin le'el simin shin lamid." So we'll say, look how these two simonim in Shulchan Aruch play off each other. Now we'll say, so if you notice over here, the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch in Simin Taf Reish Nun Dalet, right? The lashon in number 7 is mikabelas isha halula miyad bina miyad baila umachziraso l'mayim. Machziraso means what? Machziraso means what? You're putting it back. What about if, let's say, the lulav wasn't in water over Shabbos, and I want to put it in lechatchila for the first time? So now the Shulchan Aruch says, ayin le'el simin shin lamed vav sif yud aleph, or b'mishnah berurah sham. So again, I will say here, if you notice the Mishnah Berurah over here by Hilchos Lulav references us back to our Mishnah Berurah in Siman Shin Lamed Vav, where it quotes the Machlokes, are you allowed to put a plant or flowers into water lechatchila on Shabbos? He goes, says Mishnah Berurah Sham v'hinei b'Shabbos asal tziyam mimayim demuktuhu kid lakamas. Okay, there's a separate part. Obviously, this is on Yom Tiv. We're talking about over here by Lulav, because on Shabbos of Sukkis, a lulav is muktzah. Right, huktzasa mitzvah, and therefore ultimately again cannot be moved at all. Okay, so I will say so. Really, so lemaisa, what do we do by the flower case? Lemaisa, what do we do by the flower case? So I will say so. It would seem to be that obviously lechatchila, it would be best to go with the first opinion, namely make sure that flowers are in water before Shabbos. And again, really, the allowance is that if you remove them, you could put them back in. But again, you can't change the water. You can't add more water. If for some reason you forgot to put the flowers into the vase before Shabbos and the vase is prepared, the Sharatzin says, okay, you could be makel and you could put the flowers back in. But of course, all of this assuming that we're not talking about flowers that have the ability to blossom, right? For the bulbs to open up. But obviously, if it's, which I think is most flowers are like that, but I don't know.
You mean open up on Shabbos? It's not open up at any time.
It has the ability to open up any time. But again, because you don't know. You don't know, right? If it's a type of bulb that could open up, again, you want to if there's a kind of plant that only opens up, 48 hours later. I don't know. The halacha doesn't seem to distinguish between that. It seems to lashon seems to be that it's a din in the category of plant, or the din in the category of flower. Then, according to everyone, you would not be permitted to even return that back to water on Shabbos. Good. Take a look at number 10 on both sides. Another category here. So this is the Yerushalmi. So the Yerushalmi here is in the midst of an involved discussion regarding Zoreya. And one of the things that the Yerushalmi brings up as one of the examples of Zoreya, if you look at I underlined it on your sheet there, right? Number 10 is underlined. Ha'osebatim? Good. Osebatim means that in order to facilitate growth, literally you make a structure over the plant to facilitate growth. In other words, what the Yerushalmi is introducing us to is the concept of protecting a plant so that it grows is also a din of Zoreya. So, for example, just to give you an example of this, let's say again, if I have a plant and the sun is very strong, so I want to go ahead and hang a tarp. Let's say, assuming that I'm doing it in a way where it's not an ohel, I'm not erecting. Right? So let's assume all that, right? So that notion of creating something that protects the plant from sun or from dangerous air, that's also called Zoreya, because it makes sense, because Zoreya is any activity which facilitates or enables growth.
So would that include, you wouldn't be able to enter into the greenhouse if you had an accident?
Oh, excellent. You're on fire tonight. Good. Hold on to that for 2 seconds. We're going to see that it's coffee. That's the secret. Okay. I'm sorry? Blinds in the house. Good. We're going to see. We're actually blinds in the house. We're actually going to get to Eretz Hashem a little bit more next week. We're going to talk about that. But the greenhouse actually is explicitly stated in Shemir Shabbos. We're going to see in just a moment. So we'll say, take a look at number 11. Asur lechasos mishtala. Bechol mechase shu. So we'll say literally again, you can't cover. Mishtala is a nursery. Makom shemagad lemot tzmachim tzeirim. A nursery. You can't go ahead and cover a nursery with any type of cover. V'chein asur lahasir mechase. You can't remove the cover. In other words, obviously again, the goal of the cover would be protect the plants from sunlight, right? The goal of removing the cover is to expose them to sunlight. So you can't do that on Shabbos because that facilitates growth. V'zos mishum sha'osekein miskaven letipuach hatzmachim. Because obviously, if you're doing this, why are you doing this? You're doing this because you want to facilitate growth. You want to help the plant life, the vegetation, the flowers. So we'll say, so this is just like another offshoot of this Melachos. So now we see again doing something which quote unquote protects the growth of the plant or facilitates, right? Blocks out the sun, allows the sun in. Ultimately, again, is going to be Zoreya. Now watch this. Aval. But if a person wants to walk into a greenhouse, here it is. So mutar lo liftoach as hadelas od lesogra. You are allowed to walk in, right? In other words, you're allowed to walk in and walk out, right? Because obviously, again, that's not. Even though there might be a benefit for the plants like that, it's not that it's just not. It's more that it's just not your kavana. It's more that again that halacha l'mayis again that's just normal activities of daily living. So therefore, I'm sorry. Okay, but I'm saying, but the notion of going in and out ultimately is considered to be activities of daily living, and therefore Allah L'may says mutter. We'll say, take a look at the footnote. Yes.
Even though you have no business being in there on Shabbos because it's all muktzah anyway.
There's nothing to say that I can't walk through my greenhouse. I just want to walk. I want to enjoy the plants. Nothing. In other words, I'm not working there. I'm not doing anything. I just want to spazier. That's fine. So we'll say, take a look at the footnote. So the footnote Lamed, he says over here is as follows. He says, Vim osekin kedei limnoa rikuz yeser shel choma mishtala, mishum sheyesh chashash atzmochim sheba yiskalalu, nira deshari b'tnai sheyaser samachas lifnei zrichas hashemesh. Shabbos say this is actually very interesting. See here, Shmir Shabbos Hilchos says like this. So remember again, in the case that he is referring to, over here is, let's say I have a cover over the nursery, right? So I want to remove the cover. remove the cover to allow in the sunlight or to block out the sunlight. So he says something very interesting over here. He says, so let's say again, I'm doing so because I don't want the plants to overheat. Alright, so we're not going to get too into this right now because I think this is, very into the agricultural side of things. But he's saying about, say, if you could imagine for just a moment, let's say again, the person wants to remove a cover over the nursery, right? So technically speaking, the way he could do it, if he wanted to, is remove it before the sun comes up on Shabbos. So technically speaking, if you're to remove it, and it is essentially at a time where there is no net benefit to the plant life, then einachinami, that wouldn't be Zoreya. Okay, that's all he's really adding in over here. Again, there's a lot of interesting lumdis in this. He quotes, if you skip down a little bit, he says, אבל רגילים תמיד בעבודה שכזו מסתבר דאסר אפילו אם עושה פעולה נעשה כגון. Okay, so I'll say, I'm not going to, I put this on here, you'll look it on your own, we're not really getting into this. What I want you to take from this is ultimately, again, the Yerushalmi introduces us to osebatim, that even creating protective things over the plants, ultimately, again, is a form of Zoreya as well. So therefore, again, the ramifications for the nursery and the greenhouse. Good. Both say now, in 12 and 13, which is going to be the last part of our shir, which is going to lead us into next week's shir as well, I want to deal with one other case, a really fascinating case that is actually going to have a lot of fascinating repercussions in a number of different ways, specifically as follows. Sometimes, a person has a sukkah, so people sometimes have what's called a shlak over the sukkah, right? Which essentially is a tarp that you could roll out over your sukkah. This way, again, when it rains, you unroll the tarp. Again, leaving aside if there are potential binyan issues and how you avoid bona issues. I guess we're leaving it on the side right now. But now, again, I let's say, so Baruch Hashem, I'm sitting in my sukkah, I see it's beginning to rain, I roll out the shlak, I roll out the cover. Now it finished raining, I want to roll back the cover. What's the problem? The problem is when you roll back the cover, what's going to happen? Water gets on the ground. So the Shaila Bosai is halacha l'maisa. So how do I deal with this? What do I do? Now remember, obviously putting water on the ground is going to be Zoreya. So how does one deal with this particular issue?
Doesn't the same water come off your chair, your table, anything you move or touch or when you get in there afterwards?
So no. Let's say again. So I think it would be the same shot. You'd have to be careful. In other words, if let's say I go into my sukkah after it rains, and now let's say I had a plastic tablecloth on my table. So now I have to go ahead and wipe. So I have to be careful. In other words, I have to be mindful about how I'm wiping that off, and that goes into who's Brian's idea over here about what happens if something goes onto the concrete and it flows up. You have to be mindful. So yes, it could be this. It could be the same shaila. So I'll say. So the question over here. So what do you do? What does one do, or what are my options in a scenario like this? I want to show you something very interesting. Take a look at number 12, and actually this is a really fascinating discussion. So the Mishnah Berurah, unrelated to our topic here tonight, in Siman Reish Nun Gimel writes as follows: says Mikol Makom ba'amira le'enu Yehudi dehavishvus deles bo ma'isa lo machmarinan kulehai b'shari af b'psik reisha. So I'll say, let me take a step back over here. The problem is, you'd be tempted to say, I should have really explained this before I read this. You'd be tempted to say, there's really no problem with me removing the sukkah cover, the shlak, right? Why? It's not my kavanah, right? I don't have any kavanah to water the ground. What's the problem with saying that? What's the problem? Psik reisha, right? The water is definitely going to go on the ground. So the Mishnah Berurah says something very interesting. The Mishnah Berurah says that Amir L'Nachri by psik reisha is mutter. So you could ask a guy, you could ask a non-Jew to do something, right? Even though again it's a psik reisha. Again, especially where there's a more acute need, you'd be permitted to do that on Shabbos. So therefore, the first approach, ultimately again to understanding what you could do with your shlak is you could have a non-Jew go ahead. You could ask him straight out to go ahead and remove it. It's a psik reisha. So Amir L'Nachri by a psik reisha ultimately again is going to be mutter. Now I want to show you something that is a little bit more even of a potentially lemaisa example of this, more than just the shlach. Look at number 13. This is a great piece. We'll say let's get number 13. B'shachacho lahotzi es ha'ar shebesoch refrigerator be'erev Shabbos. Now say, tell me this doesn't happen to everyone. At some point in time, could happen right on vacation. What happens? You forgot to remove the light from the refrigerator on Erev Shabbos. Okay, so now what do I do in that type of scenario? So you'll see why I'm bringing this down over here. So Rav Moshe writes as follows. He says, Hine, kishish ba'mekarer shenik refrigerator, or electri, shenidlak bepsichas dalas hamekarer, v'nichbe beskiras hadalas. So we'll say, so now you have a refrigerator, and the refrigerator has a light, and the light goes on when the refrigerator door is opened, and it goes off when the refrigerator door is closed. And I forgot to, whatever, in other words, I think now in the refrigerators now you can't actually take out lights, but you could tape down the thing, or yeah, I think now with the new refrigerators, you can't. I think everything is like built in. Yeah, but you could whatever. You tape down like the little zach, that pushes in. Right, whatever. Right, but whatever it is, you forgot to do what you were supposed to do on Erev Shabbos. Okay, so what's the halacha? He says vaday asur leftoach shari psik reishu shevaday nidlak. So we'll say. So first of all, let's understand you can't open the refrigerator, right? I can't open. Why can't I open the refrigerator? Psik reishu. So psik reishu. Okay, v'hugam nechalo. Now we'll say not only is this a psik reisha, but what? It's a psik reisha denechale, right? Why is it denechale? Why it's a beneficial psik reisha. Why is it beneficial? We'll say it's always beneficial to have light in the refrigerator. In other words, no one could say it's not beneficial. It's not true. It's not true. It's always, whether I need it or not might be a secondary issue, but Lamaisi, you can't say that it's not beneficial. So we have a real problem over here, because not only that is it a psik reisha, but it's a psik reisha denechale. It's a beneficial psik reisha. Okay. I will say, let's say a person opened the refrigerator, and this happens, how do I remember that I forgot to take out the light before Shabbos? Right? Ta-da, v'ahiyar, right? In other words, it's Shabbos, and I just discovered what I did. Asra lisgar. So I'll say the problem is that you can't close the refrigerator door. Shahare vaday nichbe upsik reishu. Because we'll say ultimately again, if I go ahead and I close it, that's also going to be a psik reishu. Va'afim lo nechale nami asar. Now we'll say obviously here's the difference. With opening the door, it's a psik reisha denechale, right? With closing the door, it's a psik reisha delo nechale, right? Because in other words, when you close it, I don't care. Yes.
If it's a swinging door, can you just take your hand off and whatever happens, happens? Someone will just close kind of on their own.
Yeah, I guess so, right? In other words, yeah, if you have like a refrigerator that just like closes itself. Yeah, I guess so. Again, you're still going to be stuck with opening it again, but enachinami, that could work. Yeah. So look what he writes. He says, "Va'afim lo nechale nami aser v'choshkin she'efshar shegam nechalo shalahafsid mashiyah lehadalek es ha'ar kishu muskar she'im lo tzorech me'ar." Fine. V'mikar ma'achal m'sheichim l'Shabbos nimtza sham. So now look, if at the end of the day I don't need my refrigerator, okay, fine. So there's nothing to worry about. He says, but what if, which is most commonly the case, the food you need for Shabbos is in the refrigerator? So what do I do now? Nimtza sham yesh lahatir liftoach al yedei nachri. Interesting. But Moshe says, you could ask a non-Jew to open the refrigerator door. V'anochri yisalek games ha'ar, mishum shegam zehu tzorech kedei sheyuklu likach l'seuda shniya. So we'll say, not only can I ask the non-Jew to go ahead and open the refrigerator door, but what else could I do? I could ask him to remove the light. I can ask him to remove the light once he's there. Kedei isa beramo, as the Ramah writes, Shemin Ayin Shvov, Siv Beis, Dinoagin Lahakel Tzorach Gadol, Ba'amira L'Nachri, Afilu B'Malacha Gimura. So we'll say, because again, this goes back to what we saw in number 12 as well, that Allah L'Maisa, Amir L'Nachri, in a case of Psik Reisha, is ultimately going to be permitted. Now again, what Moshe adds in over here is, there has to be a Tzorach. Right, there has to be a real need. So obviously, again, just asking a non-Jew to do malacha just without an acute need, that wouldn't be permitted. But but you're allowed to do amir l'nachri even for a psik reisha if there's a real tzorach. V'apsicha mutra ayidei nachri af kishein tzorach chokach Mishum dechevan she'eno miskavin lahad leka'ar afshu psikresha mutar lomar lenachri bisofo. So this is actually interesting, I will say. So now Moshe adds in this piece over here. He says the act of having the Jew open the refrigerator door is absolutely permitted. Why? Because again, I will say that'll be a case ultimately again of a psik reisha, where Amir Lanachri is going to be permitted. Aval Omer lo sheyesalik es ha'ar shumiskavin lechabos hurak kishesh sarakados. We'll say, so now Moshe makes the following distinction. To ask the non-Jew to open and close the door, so that's easier. That's easier because that's Amir Lanachri in the case of psik reisha, where there's a tzorech. Where it gets a little bit more complicated, ultimately, again, is asking the Nachri to go ahead and take out the light. Because the act of taking out the light is a maisa, as opposed to opening and closing, where whatever happens with the light is just a psik reisha, not just a psik reisha, but it's an act that occurs kind of memela on its own. The act of removing the light ultimately is a real maisa. So in that case, Rav Moshe says that halacha l'maisa, really one should only ask the Nachri to take out the light if there is a significant need. So I'll give you the example of this, that it could very well be that if it's possible for me just to ask the Nachri to open the refrigerator door, I'm able to get out what I need, and then have them close it afterwards, then fine, just do that. Let's say I have a whole house of company. So again, I'm going to need the refrigerator opening and closing the entire Shabbos. That would be a case of tzorech gadol, and I'd be able to not only ask the Nachri to go ahead and open the refrigerator door, but I'd be permitted to go ahead and ask him to undo the light as well.
When you ask them to undo the light, can you do it?
Yeah, straight out. Yeah, you don't have to hint.
If you can't undo the light, that is the case. And you can get the light out, but you can take magnets and put it on top of the hinges of the door, and it will automatically turn the lights out for some odd reason. So, can you ask the non-Jew to go ahead and put these magnets and
Yeah.
that kind of?
If there is a need, in other words, all Rav Moshe is distinguishing is like this. If all you need essentially is like a one-time fix to get into the refrigerator, get out what you need, and that's it, that's all you need, then don't ask him to tamper with the light. But if you in other words, if you know you're going to need ongoing access to the refrigerator, then yes, you could ask the Nachri to tamper with light, whether it's with magnets. Sounds like some very fancy refrigerators over there, and with the Edelman's vacation. All right, it's beautiful. All right, so again, if it's magnets or whatever you'd be permitted. But again, there'd have to be a situation of need over there. That's the chap. Okay, so again, he goes on and talking about here. Moshe gets into in general opening up refrigerators, which is an interesting discussion. Not our topic for now. We'll say the only reason I'm bringing this down is because here's an application of our concept. So therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, if you have the shlak over your sukkah, you're permitted to go ahead and ask a non-Jew to go ahead and remove it for you. On Sukkis, the water is going to fall to the ground. There's a psik reisha. You're right, but you're allowed to ask a Nachri to go ahead and do something, even if it's a psik reisha, specifically in a situation of need. In an acute need, you could even ask the Nachri to do something straight out for you, right? But if it's not such an acute need, the opening and closing of the refrigerator, there would be permissible. In general, there are other cases by the refrigerator. What if you don't have access to a Nachri? Right, this happens where sometimes, again, a person realizes they did not turn off the light in the refrigerator, and there's no nachri around for me. So again, there are poskim that bring down that one could open and close the refrigerator with a shinui, right? Doing it like that, and you're essentially mitzaref a whole bunch of kulas in general about what electricity is or LED lights are. Again, with a shinui, not ideal, far from ideal, but there are technically ways to navigate in that situation as well. I'm sorry. You can have a katan. I will tell you that in general, having a katan do malacha, one always has to be careful with that, because what seems like a great idea for the adults could be disastrous chinuch for the children. But that's a possibility as well. Yep.
Closing the refrigerator is tubos, right?
Correct. But it's a psik reisha, because the light is definitely going to go out. Correct. Remember again, even though it's malacha, once something is a psik reisha, so by definition it goes into that category by itself. You no longer have the kulas of other categories. All right, Chaburah, we'll stop over here for tonight. Shkoyach, everyone. Shkoyach. That was great. So we'll spend one more week on Zoreya Mirat Hashem next week, and then We'll continue on in Meretz Hashem.